With that, moving on to an update from Captain Mike Worrell, Public Safety Communications following the Yarnell fire tragedy.
Just to have a few weeks left, we put together something to talk about the I start getting phone calls like this, like six, about recession that's going to go up in Yarnell. The firefighters just been brought down to the county governor's office. We started hearing about this recession. So one of the first things I started doing was gathering information on the recession. How we're running about 20 nurses, law enforcement, fire support, fire. Involved with the AZPSIC, Phoenix Fire, Phoenix PD, Air Support, GPS Ranger, and we had some customers who they were. So from this, I started looking at, what interoperability issues am I going to have? Trying to get these people to talk together. So DPS, they're on UHF, Phoenix PD is on 7800, Phoenix Fire is on 7800 and VHF, and then Prescott PD was on VHF. So the plan was to use theirs. I'll allow them all to concentrate. If they all had facts and the errors programming in their radio, that was also done. So on July 6th, things always change. I teach comm tech class, comm leader class, you always have a backup. Now the route changed from going Carefree Highway through Yarnell up to Wickenburg. Again, same agent. So again, we've got the same interoperability issues. The only thing that's different is AIRS doesn't cover this route. Cover it well. The other thing is there's a lot of motor officers. We found out there's maybe large motorcycle officers. That poses a unique interoperability problem. A lot of times we'll hand people two radios to listen to this interoperability channel and operate the motor officers. We have a UOSI fund we bought communications to build patch channels together. The plan was to provide a mobile patch that would travel up with the convoy. So basically, if they have a problem with coverage, that they would be able to go and be able to talk to each other with the channels patched together. The other thing that we've done in the past, urban search and rescue, we'll take one of these vehicles, we'll put it in the middle of the convoy, and we'll set up on a repeater channel. We'll have repeated communications from end to end. That allows the lead vehicle to talk to the chase vehicle, so if someone calls off, we can maintain accountability for all the vehicles that are in the convoy. The last issue is getting communications back to our dispatch centers, and also increase the press to let us know where we were at. So for that, we have satellite communication. So, looking at a convoy, what do you need? You need end-to-end communication from front to back. It allows you to maintain accountability, provide support if you have breakdowns or resistance support, also medical. And then we plan to use a mobile repeater for that. Then we're using mobile patch for motor officers. So that will allow for inter-convoy communications with disparate radio systems. Now, long-range communications, we use SATCOM to get to Phoenix Fire Dispatch, Phoenix PD Dispatch, Prescott Valley, Prescott Fire Dispatch. That will be by call. So, one of the things I do want to go on these deployments is, like I said, always been my conflict, I always been an advocate of carrying the book around and making notes. So I was on the phone with David Steele yesterday, this past year, there was some officers, when I talked to some officers, there was also they didn't, but took notes and moved stuff.
The conference bridge appears to be open, but I'm not sure I can hear what's going on in the background.
Yeah, we can't hear the presenter at all. He needs to be closer to a telephone or a microphone or something.
Yeah, it's very faint over here.
I sent a chat to the presenter, but apparently he's not reading his chat.
You can hold this or flip. Let's stick it right on the podium here. Okay. Can you? Can folks hear on the phone?
We can hear that. I can hear you ask if we can hear you, but I can't hear anything else.
All right. See if this works better.
Much better. Yes, better.
Okay. So the plan was to use this patch for the motor officer. But again, like I said, you can see I have some notes up there. DPS motors. We're going to patch UTAC 41. You see UTAC 1A there, and what kind of radio do they have? APX, VHF, whatever. So I'm trying to find out all that information as we go. So one of the things, the issues that communications people have with these incidents is coordinating their efforts with operations. So in this case, we need to connect the motor officer. So I need to talk to whoever that escort, who's in charge of escort, find out who was in there, find out what interoperability channels they had in their radios. And this was difficult. I mean, if you ask a Phoenix PD motor officer, hey, what 7-TAC channels do you have in your radio? Most of them aren't going to be able to answer that question. Or an 8-TAC channel. They don't know what that is because they don't go there. Luckily, I have some knowledge of their channel plan, so they will figure it out that they would. And then we also have PD communications personnel that were available to help me out with that. Prescott Valley, they must be in a different situation because I asked their motor officers, do you have any VTAC channels in your radio? And they said, yes, we do. So we flip to it and they go there because they probably use it more than a Phoenix motor officer would. And then last was DPS. You saw in my notes I had a UTAC 1A and a UTAC 41 written on that note page. The reason that was written there is because when I went to the DPS motor bike and I said, what interoperability channels do you have in your radio? They go, I don't know. I said, do you have any UTAC? I think so. So let's go in your radio and look. So we started looking. So I see a UTAC 41 on one motorcycle, and I go to another motorcycle and I see UTAC 1. So my guess is that the naming conventions didn't get programmed into the old bike. So we did some testing and found out UTAC 1 was the same as UTAC 41, and we're able to patch all these things together. The other thing we ran into was the officer's previous experience with communications on incidents. So one of the officers from one of the agencies, I go, we're going to try and get you communications so you can talk to DPS, Phoenix PD, and Prescott Valley. And they go, yeah, right. They've spent millions of dollars on radio systems, and we can't even talk to each other on a normal day-to-day basis, and you're going to do this on the way up there? I go, just give me a break and see if we can work through it. So I wrote down that guy's name, and we went on our way. So we start headed up Yarnell. When it got to Yarnell Hill, it was about 119. So we stopped there for a water break, and that's the first guy I looked for. I said, were you able to hear those other officers? He goes, yeah. He goes, you guys are fire, right? You got money. So the last thing is the convoy IC. So the communications vehicle, if you're going to use it as a repeater or to patch within that convoy, where would it need to logically be within that convoy? Probably in the middle. Well, they had us at the very end. So I had to go to whoever the convoy IC was and say, hey, we need to get moved up into the convoy near the middle. So they accommodated us and we were able to do a little bit better. So there's the convoy communications plan. Prescott Valley was on a VTAC channel. Phoenix PD was on an ATAC. DPS was on a UTAC. Now I could have put Phoenix Fire on this VTAC channel with them. The only reason I didn't was because when I got up to Yarnell Hill, we wanted Prescott and Prescott Valley to be able to hear us, and we knew they had coverage up on top of there. So we put ourselves on State Fire 4 or B Fire 21 in the National Naming Convention. So when we got on top of the hill, they'll be able to hear us, be able to prepare for us arriving. So we get up there. So once we get there, there's some things we need to do once we get there. What's in place, what needs to be done, and what's going to be happening in the next few days. So we found out there was an IMT in place for the memorial. It was an all-hazard zone. But these were mostly Forest Service personnel that had been moved over and were handling an all-hazards incident now. So when I went to see the COML for that was in the IMT, I said, what's the 205? Are you familiar with what a 205 is? The Incident Communications Plan. So I look at the 205, and all I see on there are National Forest Service frequencies. I said, you know that when these fire trucks come in here, these guys aren't going to be able to program these radios up like what you have written on this plan, right? He goes, no. Well, this guy that was in this IMT had never operated outside the Forest Service system, so he didn't have a good idea of the capabilities of the resources that were coming up to support this incident. So I said, we're going to have to make some changes. I said, you know about the NIFOG. There was some NIFOG back there. The little blue book has all the national interoperability frequencies there. Have you ever seen one of these? And he goes, no. I said, well, there's frequencies in here we can use. And he goes, well, who has to authorize it? I said, basically, we do. The next thing I did was I found out who the local contacts were. Now, we've been talking about TIC-Ps in here for a long time. What does a TIC-P give? What information does a TIC-P give me? What resources are in that area? Are there cache radios in that area? Are there mobile gateways, portable repeaters, those kinds of things? So, is there a TIC-P? So I called somebody up there. Eluding me right now. But anyway, cache radios, interoperability plans, and systems. That's what I'm looking for. And the last thing is dispatch centers. Who are the dispatch centers up there, and what are they dispatching? Because those dispatch centers are the coordination point for all the communications in that area. And then developing a communication plan. Who are the players? What radios are they bringing? Because if they're bringing up radios and I need to reprogram, I need to make sure I have the software and the cables and those kinds of things. What bands and what are the coverage requirements for the incident? So this is what I found out when I got a hold of local contacts. And one of them was Tad Coiner from the city of Prescott Fire. And these people are all capable of running incidents like this. But what you find is when an area is impacted, they have so much going on just to support their own city that they aren't able to sustain and take on all this extra work. But what I found was there were no cache radios available because the Yarnell fire itself, they had taken the cache radios and were using them somewhere else. And what I found for the interoperability system, AIRS had poor coverage, didn't cover the entire incident area that I would need to operate in, and it had spotty coverage, so I was unsure whether it would work or not. One of the other things that happened was there was the Phoenix RWC has high site coverage up there, but that was also spotty. I didn't know exactly what the footprint of that was. And then again, found out the dispatch centers, phone numbers and contacts at the dispatch centers, we were all met. Players, we had over 100 agencies that sent resources up there. There were trucks from Yuma all over the place. I mean, all the way up there. All North Phoenix, in northern Arizona, we had response from up there too. Radios, all different brands. What bands? All different bands. And then coverage requirements: Prescott, Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, and then who knows where else, because these guys were from all over the country, and we're going to have to support moving their remains wherever they need to go in the end. And then also we had one that ended up being buried in Yarnell. So this is the coverage footprint of AIRS. The thing about these coverage maps are predictions. They aren't actual coverage. So when you look at these, is you actually have to go out and make sure that coverage is there. And so what I found was, even though Prescott's right up in here, even though it's all yellow, coverage is spotty. We had over 100 different agencies sent to assist. They all brought their home radios. So what kind of difficulty does that pose for the ComTech or the ComL that's going to be operating on that incident? So now I have firefighters coming from all over the place, and they don't know that their radios are programmed with those interoperability channels. I have to go to each one individually and find out, do you have your national interoperability channels in your radio? If they say yes and they know, then great. If they don't, then it's like, okay, let's take a look and see if we can find them. They're on Easter.com. So that takes time. So that's part of the identifying the commonalities, is the interoperability frequencies, and finding out who the field person is. So one of the things that when we go to these things is we find out that we don't always have enough radios to hand out. There weren't 100 cache radios that I could hand out to each agency that showed up. And each agency showed up, fire trucks, we travel in packs, so there's 4 guys per agency that are there, so I need 4 radios for those guys for them to operate. So I don't have that number of radios to support that. So what we do is use that command structure to your advantage. These agencies that showed up, try to keep them as a functional group, give them one tactical objective, give them a command radio and their division radio, and give them a local from that area so that they have coverage through the local radio system to get access to the command structure. So some people may do their home radio, but it'll be one of theirs and one command radio from the incident. One of the other things I teach in comm classes, they always say, well, when you show up, they're going to have an ICS 201 filled out with a command structure. So when I showed up there, I said, I get with the INT, I said, who's handling EMS? And so I go to the guy handling EMS. I said, do you have a 201? He goes, no. I said, what do you got? A piece of paper. Sometimes it's on a napkin. Sometimes it's on brown paper bag, whatever. But that was the command structure for that incident. Smartphones are great because you just snap a picture and you have a copy of it. So law enforcement, what we found was they had the most wide range of radios. They were on 700, 800, UHF. They ran the gamut. So in their operational plans, again, assign those agencies a tactical perspective and pair them with the local. So you have one person, a local agency that ties to the command structure, and you may have 5, 10 personnel from a different agency that are paired up with that person. So maintain accountability and you reach back to that person. So the fire operation up there, we were able to use the Prescott channel for our operational channel for command. That was there just as chance because they're bringing up a new channel. It hadn't gone online yet. So one of the things that we did is I called down to Phoenix and tech support, our IT department. They programmed up 50 radios and had them up for the next day. And a lot of times our techs don't give the credit they're due. I mean, those guys sit at the bench and they're doing all this work. They don't get to go hand out the radio and they aren't standing in front of the crowd, but there's all this work that, the result wouldn't happen if they weren't there working at their benches. So it's always important to thank those people. But we were operating on a command channel. It was on VHF. Luckily, most fire departments are on VHF. We have the cache radios, and the common thing there that we have State Fire Mutual Aid channel, Fire 4. And since most fire agents are on VHF, they had access to that channel on their radio. So that when they showed up, we told them to stage on channel 4, would contact you and tell you where to go. So remember I always said, talking about a backup plan? So we had areas of poor coverage. They were going, okay, we'll use cell phones there. Well, who's been around Prescott? Who's gone out in the woods in Prescott hunting or whatever? Is the coverage really great there? No. So that was going to be an issue. And then we had an equipment failure. That Fire 4 that we were relying on, just what happened, their transmitter, their PA went out. They weren't able, we were able to talk in, but their dispatch center couldn't talk back to us. So again, we started using the communications Suburban. We would send that thing out. We'd ran that thing all day long. And we would use, we had long-haul communications through our satellite communications. And then what we had them use was tap communications on the ground, giving them one of those national interoperability channels that they operated on the ground with. That division suit would tell the communications operating in the Suburban, I need you to report this back to command back in Prescott. And that's how the communications chain went. We had satellite phone systems if they needed phones, data systems. One of the things that started happening up there, weather started rolling in. And during one of the funerals, we had the interment site dug and everything. Well, it was raining so hard, that hole was filling up with water. We were having to get it out. And then we had lightning on top of that, so we didn't want our personnel, we had the ladders up and all that stuff. We had to get our personnel away from those structures when the weather was rolling in. And the last thing we did was some video streaming, so we were able to see from on-site what was going on at the site, and that was important because they were using the requests from the families, whether they used Prescott rigs or, you know, how many fire trucks does Prescott have? How many ladder trucks does Prescott have? And they were running multiple funerals in one day, so they would set up for one funeral, and they would have to break down that apparatus and move it to the next one. And all that had to be done in the timeline. If it didn't make it, you know, the funeral would be held up. So video streaming became important because we could see, okay, they're breaking down, start getting them ready to move, moving to the next site. There was one firefighter that was from near Santa Barbara, and firefighter Meisner, and so this was posing a difficult issue. His wife was driving his pickup back. That was her wish was to drive him back. They drove this drive every year to Prescott. He was a seasonal worker, so they drove out there every year. So she wanted to drive him home the same way they came out. She was pregnant. She was probably she's in her second or third trimester of pregnancy. And so we tried to talk. We said, we'll transport the truck out. And with the help of the Hungry Club, gave the fuel supply. They were trying to get that all arranged, but her wishes were, I'm driving him. I don't care what you say. Driving. So the community up there, she had this pickup truck, and they're making this long drive, and there's concerns about the mechanical condition of the vehicle. So the community up there, they fixed the truck, got it ready. So we arranged for a Forest Service escort to take her up there. So now we want to maintain, we have responsibility to get that person from Prescott to Santa Barbara and maintain accountability of them all along the way. So how many of you are on Facebook, friends on Facebook? Well, I pulled out my friend, all the people I friended over the years. I called Kevin Rogers up and said, I got a problem. We're sending these people across the desert, they're driving across. I need contact with GPS for these people as they move across radio channels. So he gets me the radio frequency for the GPS calling channel. We program up a radio. I give them the radio. So now I have CHP. Kevin had any contact with CHP, so he worked his in. Didn't come up with anything there, so I had a friend of mine from LA County Fire, and I remember that a friend of mine said that, hey, I had this buddy who got me out of a ticket. I said, well, if you can get him out of a ticket, you can get me a phone number. So I give him a call and said, hey, I need contact with CHP as these people move from the Arizona border all the way to Santa Barbara. So they got me contact information for all the dispatch centers along that route going to Santa Barbara. The last thing was So this was giving us our accountability, how we're going to maintain accountability for them. The last piece was that we wanted to maintain contact with that unit as they went all the way across with her to make sure that she got there, they ran into any trouble, that we could do, make those phone calls that we could make back in Prescott, get them logistical support or whatever help they needed. So we gave them a satellite phone. This unit that we gave them actually has a press-to-talk function on it, so it acts like a radio. You key it up, talk on it like it's a trunk radio system in the sky. So we gave them that, and we sent them across. And this is a picture of them going, I think it was into Ventura County. So firefighters were lined up all along that route. But they got there safely. The Forest Service guy made him sign his life away, give me credit card numbers and all that kind of stuff, so made sure I got the equipment back. And it was equipment that I hadn't officially got permission to take up there, so I want to really make sure that I got it back. So during that week, services and transport arrangements were carried out for the 19 following. So the communication unit, some of the things, what knowledge, skills, and abilities do they have? Do they have, one of the big deals was having some locals there to support whatever that incident was going on. Because without that local support, the dispatch centers, the City of Prescott Fire being able to use that command channel, it's been a little bit tougher. And then the impact of the event. What's the impact of the event on that local area? And how's it impacting you as a communication unit? So some of the closing points of this was the communication unit. The issue with the traveling patch, that's something that we don't typically train for. And we haven't done it with our law enforcement partners. Fire hasn't done it with our law enforcement partners. We've done it within the USAR world or the search and rescue world, but we haven't done it in that world. So one of the things we do with our common unit field days and things like that, we train amongst ourselves as communications, but we need to expand that training out to the operations people so that they're actually using the equipment that we're putting out to support them, because we're out there to support operations. And if they don't understand the little idiosyncrasies, and like when you key up and you got to wait a second for that repeater to grab, those kinds of things, and they're going to not be familiar with it, and they're going to take that as an equipment failure. The equipment, know what equipment you have, what equipment's available. Try to think of what equipment you're going to need to support the effort that you're going to be doing up there. And again, the relationships. The relationships are always a big deal. Find all your friends in Facebook or whatever. You pull out your old address book and you're starting to look people up. Reach out for help. Airs. Coverage and the capacity of air. Airs is good on a limited basis. It provides one patch channel between disparate systems. So that creates a capacity issue. You can't support a large operation on that. So I think we need to look, this commission was actually formed to look at building a statewide system. I think we need to refocus ourselves on doing some of that, because this does not get the job done. National interoperability channels, the training. Phoenix Fires is guilty as Phoenix PD is not training our personnel what these national interoperability channels are. Our officers need to know where to go on those radios to find out where those channels are in the event that they go to something like this, or somebody's coming in to support us, because say the National Guard comes in to assist Phoenix, they have access to national interoperability channels. Then the statewide communication system, we don't have one, but that provides interoperability, because if you have a statewide communication system, not everybody needs access to it, but at least it provides a connection to command to provide a wide area footprint to cover a whole incident. Up there we had patchwork of coverage that we had to work around to support. And then that brings along with it the capacity, and like I said, the coverage footprint. Okay. Any questions on that?
I have questions. Thank you for your presentation. That is fascinating. How you're able to react. The question I have is, you talked about
once I found out who the players were and then we had the channels in there, that rig is pre-programmed with all those national interoperability channels, so that capability is built in that vehicle. So long as that common connection point, the national interoperability channels are there, we can do that like that. But it's like, you know, I show up and I say, hey, you have the channels in there, and if they don't know, then you know, I'm playing detective. Trying to find that information out.
Now, probably the challenging, right? I mean,
Yes.
I can understand people wouldn't necessarily know what that was.
And the other thing, you know, we don't do typically as agencies is we don't carry a channel plan around, you know, on our vehicles that shows, you know, what those channels are in that radio. And then the other issue we have was the naming conventions, you know, keeping radios up to date as far as the naming conventions, you know, that was an issue also.
I heard a lot of really great things about that, and that I'm very impressed. It's great to see that kind of thing come into play. Obviously, he's such a graduate. The second question I have is, I'm kind of surprised, does Kevin Rogers have Facebook?
He was one of the ones that didn't. I don't do Facebook myself, so I was old school and taking out the address book and looking at my contact list, and so. But some of the newbies always have the Facebook thing.
Was any consideration given to leveraging the FEMA Region 9 cache of radios in Sacramento? I believe they have 5,000. They can deploy anywhere, which would provide a possibility.
We actually had, the Forest Service actually had cache radios there on the ground, and we did utilize those. And for the people that didn't have access to that Prescott VHF command channel, as we were programming that up into those radios and we were handing those out. So we handed those National Interagency Fire Center radios out. And then we also had another cache of radios that came up in addition to the 50 that I listed there that were the Tri-Band Harris radios. So they had the interoperability channels in 7, 8, D, well, and U. So that radio provided a great amount of flexibility and being able to program that channel plan in there and say, here, you know, if you're doing this, go to this channel. Over there, I'll find it out and go to this. Okay.
You have on your feet.
Well, on the ride up there, you know, we're all faced with money issues. So on the ride up there, they said, okay, we'll send you and 2 other people up there to run the Suburban, get up there, and then the idea was that we were just going to go and we were going to come back. So once we got up there, and we met with the INT, there were some people that we need you to stay. So my boss was going to say, okay, you can stay, and then so the other 2 people who were with me, so basically my techs, they took off. And they took off to go to eat because it was a long day. So I got to looking around. I said, you know, I'm pretty alone here, and there's this Forest Service guy, and he's alone too. He doesn't know my world, and I don't know his world, so I'm going to be first. I call my boss up and say, hey, I need to keep at least one of those people, so they let me keep one person. So it was me and another guy, the Forest Service guy, and then he actually had one other person with him. That was it. And then the other support we got was from the local police, calling up, just information-wise. But again, that support that reached back to Phoenix, our technical department at home, that was huge. Because those guys, they dropped everything they were doing to support what we were doing up there, make sure we had the equipment we needed in hours. So hats off to that.
So given all the lessons learned from this, and obviously this is certainly challenging, a lot of work. Action Force created a zone to figure out, God forbid, the next time something like this happens, and hopefully it won't, that it'd be easier for the next person to create that.
I think I would say yes and no. There was an overall incident after action for the whole memorial service piece. But I don't think there was I didn't do a communications focused one, so you know, maybe that's something I could write up to the Justice office to have that. Because I think, like you're saying, those lessons learned to be taken and turned into what our training plan is going to be and our exercise plan is going to be in the future.
And on that, Mike, beginning this is why I was listening
That was actually handled by the airport, and the Forest Service had a air support unit there, and so they handle all the aircraft.
We call that mountain crane,
So
$200.
we didn't have to mess with that, which was unfortunate.
So get authorization, maybe
The fire guy out